Hello, everybody. Let me do this, and then I will go ahead. All right, so welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Sunday, October the 19th, 2025. So it's our weekly look at comics history. Tonight, we will, of course, be going over books that we'll be finishing up our June of 1940 coverage with United Features Syndicate. We'll be featuring books from there, including, of course, the 25th issue of single, what they called single series, which was just a bunch of one shots. OK Comics #1 and Sparkler Comics #1. Of course, I'm here with my co-host tonight for the evening, the Metal from the Vomitorium. So before we get much further into it, I'm gonna hand the reins over to him for a moment and let him promote anything he wants to promote. Any project he's doing, his channel. You know the shtick, right? Right there, my friend.
Hey, yes, sure. I'm the Metal. I'm the creator of X Dynamis Chaos, which is a vibrant world of different fictional stories that sometimes intermingle with each other. But we haven't been. Well, I've been working on some stuff behind the scenes for that, so there hasn't been anything published on the site for a while. But you can find all of my fictional works at xdynamischaos.com. Very fun. It's been getting a lot of traffic out of nowhere. I guess some random people have been finding my site, but I can never complain about that. And also throughout the week, I stream on the Vomitorium Live. Used to be just talk shows, but I've been doing a lot of game streams during the day lately, including randomly Final Fantasy VI on Thursday. So, you can hop around, see what I do if you're bored. But yeah, fun stuff.
All right, so here's his link for the and again a friendly reminder to everybody as I show you the links to as I show the links to Metal's work here. Friendly reminder to everybody, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. That goes for, of course, both my Rumble and my YouTube viewers. And of course, if anything here that we talk about tonight grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and we will try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. With that being said, let me just reiterate what we're going to be going over tonight. So we're going to be finishing up our coverage from June of 1940. Comics that went on sale in June 1940 with books that came out from United Features Syndicate. We're going to start off with single series issue number 25, Heavy and Slats. Now, all three books tonight are going to just feature one feature. Bunch of comic strip reprints from basically some of the popular comic book characters of the day. Heavy and Slats and single series, the Captain and the Kids, the Captain the Kids comics, or Captain the Kids feature in OK Comics #1, but the rebirth. And this is something I found out recently, a while back. So the Captain Kids actually got got a cartoon adaptation back in 1938. MGM did a brief series on the Captain and the Kids. With Billy Bletcher doing the voice of the Captain and Martha Wentworth doing the voice of Mama or Mother. So that was pretty interesting. And then Jim Hardy in the Sparkler comics. Metal, did you just want to do commentary tonight, or did you feel like doing some reading?
I'm not sure. Maybe we'll start with commentary.
Okay, and just
Though, if we're going to be reading this Captain character, I think I may end up wanting to voice this Captain.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so
I've always wanted to be a captain.
Well, I do know you like to be in the shadow. That much I know. Anyway, so let me see. Oh, yeah. Okay, and tonight we're going to do things a little differently. I already mentioned this too, of course, metal. So you guys know that usually when we're doing the comics after each story, we'll stop and we'll talk a little bit about it. I'll ask, overall impressions. Tonight, since we're dealing primarily with just 3 single feature books here, instead of doing it after each individual story, we'll do it after so right now it's going to be all Abby and Slats. So we'll read about 4 or 5 there, then we'll talk a little bit about it. Then when we go over to OK Comics #1, do Captain the Kids. Then we'll of course we'll read about 4 or 5 there, do the commentary, and I'll ask the questions, all that, and then of course so on and so forth. So, and then of course we'll wrap things up with this day in each history. So actually, Metal, if you can entertain the people for a moment, I'm going to go off camera here for a moment here. I'll be right back.
Me being entertaining? That's a pretty big ask, but I'll try. I guess with the amount of time I spent on camera, I probably should be entertaining. You'd figure you'd pick up that talent by now or not. Hey, Fizz Chozo, you're back to playing Styx. That's exciting. Styx is a good game. But yeah, we're going to be reading basically just a bunch of shorts that were all reprinted into a single feature book over and over again tonight. A bunch of different features. So that's always fun. Not that they would be considered shorts during their initial printing, but when you recollect them like that, they are functionally just a bunch of different shorts. They would have been originally page or panel comics.
All right. Hey, Fitzozo, thanks for dropping in. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started then on the material at hand. So Abby and Slats, time register, I guess, U.S. Okay, 10 cents. 64 full color pages. All of this particular. So this is these are the 2 main characters right here, Abby and Slats. All right, so let's see what we got here. Tip Top Comic Patterns. A cinder spinner. I don't know. Did you ever have a spinner?
No, I did not.
Spins like a top. It don't make the game. Yeah, I mean, I think they started kind of going out of style by the time I was growing up. But the spinners that they're talking about here, of course, are ones you use for games.
Yeah. I mean, I've had plenty of spinners in my board games and stuff. I've never had this type of spinner they're talking about, though I am aware of their existence.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about spinners in general.
But... Yeah. No. I mean, I've owned board games that have come with their own spinners.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Presenting Rayburn Van Buren. Who brings you Abby and Slats? Judy J. Hagstone and Becky. Okay. All right, so here we go. Oh yeah, this is probably not the best copy, but I'll try to make do.
Did you, before getting into it, want to give any type of overview on the type of stories or gags that Abby and Slats go into for us who don't know who the characters are at all? Did you look into it beforehand?
Not really, because I knew this is a pretty popular. This is somewhat of a popular feature. As far as I know from the few I've read before, this is kind of more of a slice of life humor type strip. So there are some, I think it's kind of, you know, one of those like older adults, younger, or maybe teenage kid kind of situations. Just
Mm-hmm.
some of the stuff that comes up from that. But anyways, and then of course, Jozo has some things you wanted to say here, so I'll highlight those. All right. But yeah, Abby Slats, I think, is, as I said, more of a slice of life humor type strip.
Okay. Well, that
I
sets
haven't read
expectations.
a whole lot of it, so I've read story here and there. But again, with the reprints, I don't read a whole lot of them. Like, because by this point, by 1940, you know, the transition was already going towards, okay, the reprint. You still had some magazines like some companies like United Features still doing them, but there
Yeah.
weren't as many. You had more and more companies like coming up with more of their own original stuff. If you get what I mean.
Well, I was just asking, especially for me, I have no idea who Abby or Slats are. This is the first time I've ever even heard of them, so I figured maybe you have a little insight before we jumped in. But
Not a whole lot. Sorry.
okay, well, I guess we'll learn right now.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Chugging towards Crabtree Corners Depot, a Snodgrass uh, box, an old-fashioned, ungainly but always reliable relic of the past. Yeah, I'm going to see if maybe I can enlarge it just a tad. That helps. All right, that's a. Oops, no. All right, that's a little better. That's good. In the driver's seat, another old-fashioned, ungainly but always reliable relic of the past. Abby Scapple,
I think it's Scrapple.
Scrapple, Abby Scrapple, spinster. So right there, you can tell she's like kind of an old spinster's type.
Yeah, it never fell together, never got with anybody, and just kind of grew up. You know where the term spinster comes from?
Actually, I don't. Would you like to
Yeah.
educate us for
So,
those that
a
don't know?
spinster was actually a job of somebody who worked the spinning wheel back in the day, like threading and stuff. Like in
Ah,
what's that one? Rumpelstiltskin, right? They worked the spinning
right.
wheel. So the spinning job was one of the few jobs that a woman who never got married could actually get in many places back in the day to support herself. So because it was a job often associated with women who had to support themselves, women who never got married were often called spinsters, even if they didn't work that job.
Ah, okay. That's very interesting. Always with the tidbits there. Thank you
Hmm.
there, Metal. Always. All right. At her side, her sister, Sally Scrapple, a sweet cookie left on life's shelf. A sweet cookie. Okay. Um, what do you think of that particular phrasing there, Metal?
Well, I think it's a very fun thing to say of somebody, right?
Right.
It gives you a description that any time you spend with her is going to be a delightful one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I do think that is the context here. Of course, unfortunately, today in the world we live in today, unfortunately,
Hmm.
you say something like that about a woman, and watch some Karen start screaming how that's sexual harassment, or how that's like, oh, that's like anti-woman or whatever, or that's misogynistic or whatever.
Yeah,
But
well, then I might start calling her a day old donut.
Yeah. Hmm. All right. So here we go. It's bad enough. Un- er, um, un- inheriting cousin Kate's orphan boy, but a boy named Aubrey Eustace. Hmm. Sounds like a biddy, or sounds like a sissy. I think. I think it sounds like the name of a little gentleman. But we'll wait and see. Granted, I'm doing my best. I would love it if I had a woman co-host once in a while to do these voices.
Well, listen, look
Somebody's
at the
got to do
older.
it.
Right,
Huh?
look how older one of these women are. Right, it looks like there's at least anywhere between a 5 to 10 year gap between these sisters. Like one of them, you could kind of lean more into like an older lady's voice.
Mm-hmm. Which is what I was trying to do there.
Yeah.
It's a younger one that obviously because I'm more of
Yeah.
a baritone. Okay, here we go. I hope I hope we shan't have any trouble recognizing Aubrey Eustace. Hmm. We oughta be able to recognize a boy with a name like that by the halo round his head.
See, you got some miscomprehensions here, lady. You give somebody a name that they might be considered a sissy, and they might just become a troublemaker.
Mhm. If if we had to inherit an orphan boy, why couldn't he have been a regular boy with a regular name like Mike or Joe or even Stinky?
Yeah,
Stinky
oh,
for the
sure.
most part. Okay, that's more of a
That,
nickname than I
that's
don't
a
know if anybody
more of a
really
regular
wants.
name than Aubrey.
I mean, she actually would prefer a boy. Yeah, and I don't know if you just said this as well, but she'd actually prefer a boy named Stinky over Aubrey. Did you
Yeah,
just
at
say
one point
that?
in time, yeah, it's like that's more of a regular name than Aubrey. I've known some guys named Aubrey. Now, these days, it is more in fashion for Aubrey to be a woman's name, but traditionally, it was a guy's name. There used to be tons of guys named Aubrey.
At least from my perspective, I would think a name like Aubrey, if anything, kind of screams upper crust. If you get what I mean, like
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
you might see somebody's name Aubrey who might be you know upper class, wealthy class, royalty. I mean, I would actually be. I'm honestly surprised that there isn't an Aubrey Trump, basically, or an Aubrey
Yeah.
Ford.
Well, like I said, these days, that name has kind of fallen out of fashion for a boy. You mostly see it for girls, like the actress Aubrey Plaza. But
Or
like
Aubrey
back, yeah,
Hepburn.
yeah, Hepburn too. But back in the day, right? Yeah, there were anybody from like maybe the aristocrat level of society. You might see them, playing tennis at Windsor.
Now, wouldn't that be something? Being in tennis shorts in the wintertime. I mean, you'd have to keep running to keep from freezing your legs off, right?
No, I meant Windsor Court, like Windsor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought you said
Though
winter.
they do play tennis in the winter sometimes. Yeah, it's not against it.
Hmm. All right. So, anyways, continuing on here. Look, Abby, the train's here. That must be him. Isn't he sweet? Yeah, yes, but I don't like sweets. Never did. He's dangest looking sissy I ever saw.
Now, do you want to talk about things you could not get away with these days? It's the design of that train attendant.
Oh yeah.
That is a racist
I mean,
caricature if I've ever seen one.
I didn't even look at it. I didn't even look at him. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's funny because as I told you, I've been watching a lot of the Golden Age cartoons,
Yeah.
and I've been running into quite a few where there are quite a few cartoons that actually been taken out of regular rotation on TV because they've had depictions like this.
Yeah. That doesn't even look like a person. That just looks like they drew a gorilla standing upright.
Yeah. Which, of course, we know what that's supposed.
Yeah. It was a factor of the time.
Yeah. And
It's
again,
a really good thing we don't draw like that
condone
anymore.
it here, just for any, I
Yeah.
know most people know what our stance is on it, but as
Oh yeah, it was so off that it immediately caught my attention.
yeah. But we don't necessarily condone it here. It was wrong then. It was wrong. It's wrong now. Just so people know. This is a product of the time that it was in, and therefore should be looked at through that scope. That must be Audrey Eustace. He looks just like the kind of boy I dreamed he'd be. Okay, on the second word bubble there, the tail's a little off there because I just reading it, I can tell it's probably Abby about to speak there.
Yeah, no, it's her for sure.
Yeah, but the way they got that thing pointed, you'd almost think that it was the conductor or whatever who was speaking. He looks just like the kind of a boy I was afraid he'd be. Hey! Gee, excuse me, fella. I guess I didn't see ya. You rude little bum. I oughta whale the daylights out of you for that. Well, if you feel like you oughta, come right ahead.
I like this kid. He was trying to be polite and nice to the guy, but then when he turned on him, he was like, well, if you want to threaten me with a good time.
Well, this goes back to what you were saying earlier, right? About the idea of sometimes how the perception does not always match.
Yeah. Oh, Fitzchoso actually has a good point too. That's the first one, but he does ask why black people were drawn with red lips in the 30s when black people don't have red lips now. It often varied, and it really depended on color limitations. Most of the time, they're supposed to have pinkish lips, which will depend on your ethnic background. I do actually know many black people with actual like pinkish lips instead of darker ones. But it was just because they were pulling on whatever thread they could hyper inflate, right? Like anything you could caricature more. And personally, I don't actually have a problem with racist caricature, but I do have a problem with what Fizz brings up too. When you have a racial caricature standing next to a normally drawn white person, it looks so odd. If you're going to hyper caricature anyone, you should do that to everyone, right? Because then you're doing something comedic and everyone can have fun with it. It was back when it only went this one way that I think it was particularly bad in the past.
Right. Well, I think that, and I think you may have alluded to the point in your comment there too. I think because it only went one way is why it's perceived so
Yeah.
now is so wrong now. Why it's perceived so negatively now is because as you just said, it went one way. If they did all the characters like that, then nobody would really have anything to complain about.
Yeah, because then you're having fun with everyone. Everybody gets to come in and have a laugh, right?
Right. But they weren't thinking of, I don't think they were necessarily thinking about that at
No,
that
they weren't.
point in time, So, but again, unfortunately, it also goes to show you, maybe even on some subconscious level, what people thought of each other when they did this stuff, right?
Oh yeah, actually, very often you go to these things. If you look at the background of the person who wrote and drew them, often you could usually see the difference because not every comic had overly racial caricatures in them. Some of them just drew people normally. And often, the poorer the person's background, the more evenly people were drawn.
Hmm. Well, the guy who apparently was creative Abby and Slatio, his last name is Van Buren.
Yeah, yeah. So that probably gives you something. German name sounds pretty upper crust itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but generally speaking, unfortunately, the racial stereotype for the physical appearance of a black person back then was they had the big lips, and of course their grammar was not always the most high level, as it were. So all right. So, anyways, we get ready to continue on here. Oh, Abby, that little ruffian is going to fight with Aubrey Eustace. We must stop them. Stop a good fight? Don't be silly. Now we'll see if our Aubrey Eustace has some stuff. So you won't accept my apology for shoving you accidental. So you want to shock me instead? So what? So this, you little bum. And so this, you big bum. Look at that.
Yep.
You have anything to say on that? I know you said something earlier.
Yeah, he just got what he deserved. He was trying to be nice to him originally.
Yeah. That little ruffian has knocked Aubrey Eustace down. His nose is bleeding. He can't get up. You you mean he won't get? I wonder. Okay, there seems to be now some kind of ambiguity as to which one is Aubrey and which one's not there.
Oh no, I don't know who Aubrey is from the beginning. It's the redheaded boy that beat up the other dude.
Yeah. Okay. So I think
Aubrey Slats.
Yeah. Yeah. What was that?
Aubrey is Slats. That I've already put this together. That's Slats' actual name. That's why he goes by a nickname, Slats.
Huh. Oh, this might be the very first story.
This is where they meet. Yeah.
You mean he won't get up? He's too darn scared. Well, come on. Let's save the pieces. Here, boy, stop it, or I'll whale the daylights out of you. And you Aubrey Eustace, get up off the ground. Shucks, lady. He ain't Aubrey Eustace. I am. What were you saying before? Well, I know you. What were you saying about before about appearances and?
Oh yeah. It's like the fact you like must be a dainty or sweet boy because of his name is like, yeah, but a lot of times you give a boy a name like that, and he ends up kind of just becoming a troublemaker or something, almost out of spite.
Yeah. You're cousin Kate's boy? You're Aubrey Eustace Scrapple? Yes, ma'am. But please don't say it so loud. Folks might hear. You see, my pals on the east side, um, now York, all call me Slats. Slats, Scrapple? What a horrid name. We shall call you Aubrey Eustace. Okay then. Goodbye. Oh, and there's a character in the background again.
Yeah, he didn't even need to be like they're already off the train. I mean, I guess they're still in that spot, but like they don't need to imply that they're still in the train yard. The guy just whoever drew this just wanted to draw that guy again.
Yeah.
Completely unnecessary.
Why, why, where are you going? Back to New York. I figured it'd be kind of tough living in the country with a couple of lady cousins I never saw, but I was ready to grin and bear it. Wow, lot of presumptions and assumptions here, huh?
Hmm.
Right? And you do know what happens when you practice to assume, don't you, Metal?
Yeah, but I get very tired of the phrase.
I actually first heard that saying, actually on an ER. I don't know if I told you this before, but I heard that on an ER episode.
Mm.
Paul
I heard
McCrane.
it because my mom liked to say it left and right ever since I was 4.
I can see why then you'd be so sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
Well, I heard it on an ER episode. It was actually Paul McCrane's character, Dr. Robert Romano, who who said it to Lizzie when that um, she thought that he was that now that he had become the chief of surgery or whatever, he
Hmm.
basically was over another guy who was formerly his boss, but now they kind of switched. And so she was thinking that he was trying to get that older guy out, but it was more of a inconvenience to
Hmm.
and that's when he cracked open that saying. But it's kind of a funny saying though. But I can see if you hear it a lot, I can see why you get tired of it too.
Hmm.
In fact, I was ready to stand for anything, but there's just one thing I can't stand, and that's being called Aubrey Eustace. Well, goodbye. Glad to have met you. Don't go, Slants. Don't go, Slants. This is Crabtree Corners, Slats. Your future home. It's a beautiful town. You'll love it. It's a dull little town. You'll probably hate it. It is nice and quiet. Cousin Abby. Oh, wait, Sorry. It is nice and quiet, Cousin Abby. I like quiet places a lot. It's so quiet, it'll drive me nuts. I'd give me, I'd give me right eye. There are the old elevated crashing over me ahead again. Hmm. Sometimes it's hard to read that broken grammar, but you know what nerds is, right? Metal.
Well, it sounds the same as he's. Yeah.
It's kind of like drat or darn or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like saying nuts.
Yeah. And there's so many things for young folks to like, hayrides and church socials and Sunday school picnics. You'll have loads of fun. Um, hmm. He'll most likely be bored to death. See, initially it was Sally who was all excited for the second cousin to come, and Abby was not too excited. But now it's the other way around. Huh?
Well, with her personality, was excited to see a fight. Maybe we'll realize why she never settled down with anybody and became a spinster.
Hmm.
She
Yeah.
just might not be feminine enough.
Yeah. I bet I'll have a good time. All right. Hay rides. All right. Hay rides, church socials, Sunday school picnics. If I stick this out a week, I'll I'll I'll, I'll deserve a medal. uh, See, again, I just kind of caught it mid. I didn't even. I've never read this like the origin story, the first stories. I've never read this. I think the one story I did read, one or two did read, were further along.
Mm-hmm. I've never read any of these. Never even heard of these characters before today.
Hmm. He ain't fun me. He hates her here already, but he won't let on. So I guess I better not let on how terrible so much I want the boy to stay. Hmm. So now she wants him to stay, but the other lady wants him to go.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a nice switch around there, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Well, she's probably thinking this boy sticks around, it'll actually get interesting around here.
Yeah, that's probably what she is thinking. And that, Slats, is where you're going to live. It's mighty pretty this time of year with. Look out, that pup! Land of Goshen! Crash!
Ooh, that's not gonna be good.
Just scared him. Gee, it sure was lucky I saw him in time. Lucky? Why, drat you, boy, just, just, just to save that mangy little pup, you smashed into my car. You mean I should have run this pup over to save that bus of yours? Of course, that pup isn't worth more than $2. My limousine cost me 6,000. Um, Anyone but an idiot would saved what was most valuable. Your thoughts on that statement?
My thoughts on that statement. Well, I mean, I think a life is probably more valuable than a vehicle. Just straight up. It's usually how I feel.
Yeah.
But man, I'm trying to think how much that car would have been worth.
Well, it was
Is it 41?
2000. Let's see. Oh wait. $6,000 back in June of 1940.
1940. Okay.
Are you gonna punch it up on the inflation calculator?
Yeah, no, I already got the calculator up. So that would be about $138,800.
Wow.
So yeah, I can understand why he's upset.
But
I still would prefer the dog's life.
Life is more valuable than material possessions.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, that's where I was really going with it.
Plus, those cars back then, those were like made entirely out of metal. You could buff that out a lot easier. It's not like a fiberglass car of today.
Mm-hmm. You blasted little idiot! Just to save a mangy little pup. That's not worth $2. You smash into my $6,000 limousine. You mean I should have just run that pup over instead? Yeah? Okay, somebody in the writing, somebody got a little loopy in the writing there, don't you think? Didn't they just say that in the previous panel?
Yeah, because we got two panels that are functionally the same.
I guess the payout is going to be this is going to escalate and lead into another fight. What do you think?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Of course. Well, of all the mean, tight-fisted old skinflints, scram before I forget your age and pull that derby down over your ears. Oh boy, this kid. Yeah, I'm sure Abby and Slats are gonna get along real fine. Don't you think they're metal?
Yeah, it's probably gonna be the situation where he's gonna get in trouble, and she's gonna get the earful of it, and she'll talk the person down, and then she'll turn and is like, "Good job, boy."
What? Erskine. You'll regret this someday, you red-headed ruffian.
Nobody calls anyone a ruffian anymore. I feel like it's just a missed opportunity every day.
Well, because they prefer to use more curse words, as it were.
Like scoundrel?
More like four-letter words. Four-letter words that have to do with stuff that comes out of your body. For example,
spit.
Well, rhymes with spit. Rhymes with spit. Great stuff in the boy. Well, maybe Slats was right, Abby, but it's a bad beginning for anyone in Crabtree Corners to make an enemy of Jasper Hagstone. Jasper oh, I can just imagine if Abby had an issue with the Aubrey name. I wonder. You just have to almost wonder what she thinks of the Jasper name.
Oh yeah.
Probably has an initial dislike of him as well. You're okay now. You're okay now, pup, aren't ya? Yeah, this one's being a little longer than because I thought I think most of these are going to be like, maybe 2 to 4 pages, maybe 5 at the most. But this one is going to be even. This one.
Well, so this is also what I was thinking about with those two panels that repeated. We're not necessarily seeing this in its original form, are we? Like, this is one of the reprints?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this whole comic is a reprint.
Yeah. So, like, was this originally done as comic strips?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
yeah,
when those could have been two different strips because these could have been recut and pieced together into a page format, and that could have been the end of one strip. And the reason there was a repeat is because it was the beginning of another, letting you remember where we left off in the previous strip.
let me just see something. I'm just going over to my. Let's see. I'm just going over to the Mike's Amazing World of Comics because they have a little bit,
Because if this is like that, they could have been on this little introduction of him to Crabtree Corner or whatever for weeks, just bit by bit until it added up.
Yeah. Yeah, my publication date. And I think, and I did see that. I think Peugeot's, I think, may have had a couple of new comments there, so we'll look at
Just the
those in
one.
a moment. Huh?
He just has the one.
So according to this, according to um, according to the Mike's Amazing World of Comics site, there's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 stories. They're all like comic strip reprints. They just say comic strip reprints, comic strip.
Okay, yeah. So
let
I
me
think
see.
the reason why we had those two like nearly identical panels when it came to dialogue is because one panel was the end of one strip and the other was the beginning of the next strip.
Well, see, yeah, because writer out. So actually, Rayburn Van Buren was the artist,
Okay.
and the writer was Al Cap. Believe it or not, the writer of this. This was reprinted from Comics on Parade #1, which I think itself was also a reprint. But let's see, 5 pages, 10 pages for the second story. So yeah, this could be okay. So we might just do this one just as just because I didn't think of it, but
It works as a standalone feature though because they clearly spent months slowly introducing you to this character before they had any independent shenanigans. So recollecting these strips, it almost works as a singular feature.
yeah, let me just because the first one is 5 pages, the second one is 10 pages, but this might all be.
Oh, did you know that Rayburn was a descendant of President Martin Van Buren?
What did you look him up?
Yes, I was curious about this guy. The American magazine and comic strip illustrator is actually a descendant of Martin Van Buren.
Well, I did not know that, but I
Yeah.
guess that would make sense.
Hmm.
Let's see. Actually, there's a couple of. Oh, okay, yeah, I see that. So there was a common attitude that people had in the old days that black people were less of a. Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, that was a very racist attitude and stereotype that people had. That's why a lot of slurs towards black people during the time were related to like monkeys and apes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, look at some of the cartoon representations too,
Hmm.
right? Where particularly the ones where you're depicting black people in Africa. So I'm gonna now before I continue reading this, I'm gonna look back here a bit. I'm gonna come back to this, but I'm gonna backtrack a bit just to. So this is page 6. So let's see where where we got started. Oh, so we're only like the third page into a 5-page story here. We've had a lot to say on it thus far. Maybe I do need to start hurrying along here a little bit. Let's see, at least see the time. But yeah, I think this is going to be the only story going to hit because we're commenting. Let's see, it's already 50 minutes. So yeah, I probably, because I was initially thinking that these are going to be like 2 or 3, maybe at the most 5 pages, and so we'd probably be wrapping through them real quick. But I
His
think
brother was in comics too.
huh?
Ray Van Buren's brother was in comics too. And he never got as successful as his brother to be very well known. But during most of the 50s, Dick Van Buren wrote the Tarzan comic strip.
So we're learning quite a bit about this stuff. This is your room, Slats, and this is a portrait of your Uncle Zechariah, the missionary. The missionary. He was a good man. Ha ha. He must have been good to trans their whiskers.
I think it's to raise. I think he's saying to raise them whiskers.
To raise?
No, to raise, but without the O. To raise.
Oh, to raise those whiskers. Jiminy, what a pain. Your Uncle Zechariah wasn't no beauty, Slats, and neither are you. But remember, good looks aren't as important as good deeds. Your Uncle Zechariah's life was devoted to good deeds. I hope you'll model your life after his. Yes, ma'am. No hard feelings, I hope, Uncle Zach. But I ain't gonna model my life after yours. I've got somebody bigger to look up to. Wonder who that could be. Terrible Tony. And from what little I can tell, that picture, it looks kind of like a boxer, don't you think? Picture he's holding.
Yeah. Well, from the preview we got earlier, and how much this guy likes to scrap, I think he wants to be a boxer himself. Maybe even much of this story might be how Abby supports Slats trying to become a boxer.
Slats does kind of sound like a boxer's nickname, don't you think?
Oh yeah. Dude. Like somebody walking into an office who calls themselves Slats Scrapple, you probably wouldn't take him seriously. Somebody walks into a ring named Slats Scrapple, you're like, man, am I going to get the Slats end or the Scrapple?
Yeah. Terrible Tony Pasta Fazula. I gotta say that name again. Terrible Tony Pasta Fazula.
Pasta Fazula.
Any comments?
I think he's supposed to be Italian. I'm not sure. I'm not positive. I think he's supposed to be Italian.
Yeah.
Maybe Greek. Actually, he could be like on the border. He could be Italian Greek with the Zula last part of the name. I don't know.
Guess we'll wait and see. Junior flyweight champion of the world. The man I worships today, and the man I'm gonna lick someday. isn't that the dream of many a young man, or
Mm-hmm.
was at one point, idolize somebody to be the one to beat them later in life, right?
Yeah, but it's always like a really crushing dream when you realize by the time I'm old enough in my career to be able to fight them, they're going to be so old I don't want to fight them anymore.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah. Unless he just really pops off and fights him within the next year. That would be, it's a comic. Crazy things like that get to happen.
Yeah. We must take a firm hand with the boy, Abby. We must polish off the rough spots and guide him right. Judging from the way he handled that big feller at the depot, I'd say he can guide his own right, and his left ain't bad either. Oh, about wow! You have the contrast of the two sisters here,
Mm-hmm.
the old spinster and maybe the younger, more quote unquote feminine figure in
Yeah, Abby strikes me as the type of girl that when she was in school, she ended up popping a boy in the jaw.
something like maybe Laura Ingalls.
Yeah, yeah.
Except Laura did actually get married.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We must choose a profession for him, a noble one, perhaps like perhaps like that of his uncle Zechariah, a missionary to the savage of darkest hour. Yeah, he's not gonna fly with that. We already know that.
Yeah.
Well, we've got to take the savage out of him first. So they wants to make a missionary out of me, huh? I knew I never should have come. I'll stick around just long enough to build myself up to 110 pounds. Then run away, tie up with a smart manager, and win the junior flyweight title from Tony Pastafazula. Just like that.
At least his dreams are realistic. He's a pretty small guy. He knows he's probably going to have to compete in flyweight, and he's young, so it has to be junior flyweight.
Hmm. Yeah. He's gone, Abby? Who's gone? Where? Don't stand there and gibber. Speak up. The boy. I heard someone moving around. Went out to see and just caught sight of him through the parlor window, running like mad along the river road.
Mm-hmm.
He'll catch his death of cold. He was dressed only in his underwear and sort of sneakers. Oh dear, if he had to run away, why couldn't he have dressed properly for it? But even though we know that he did say he was going to run away, it wasn't like right away.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wonder
I was
if
also
he
thinking he
really.
couldn't.
What do you think? Do you think he's actually running away, or is something else going on? You think?
Well, at first he's just going to definitely be using them, right? He just needs a place to stay for a while, but I don't think anybody in this situation has quite made up their mind yet.
Hmm.
Right. But I was actually just thinking he couldn't be in junior flyweight anymore. Back then, maybe he could have. But junior flyweight now caps off at 108 pounds, and he wants to get to 110. That would just be in regular flyweight.
Yeah. Well, okay, but where I was going with it
Yeah.
was, is he really running away, or is he maybe just going out and getting some exercise?
Oh,
Try
at the
to,
moment, yeah, because he said he's not running away yet.
yeah, and that's where I was going with
Yeah.
it, because they think
The
she
way you were
thinks he's
framing it
running
had
away.
me confused because it didn't sound like it was matching up with what I was reading in the story.
Well, what I caught here was he had already indicated he wasn't running away yet. She thinks he ran away. However,
Mm-hmm.
from what we know, he wasn't necessarily planning on running away. What we also know from that previous statement that he made was he wanted to get down to 110 pounds. So obviously
Yeah.
he's above 110 pounds. What's one way to do it? Sweat it off. Sweat it off, right? How do you sweat
Well,
it
here's the other problem too, right? Like that doesn't really matter. None of that matters because she doesn't know what we know.
off? Right. Well, yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
I know that, but just, you know, as the reader's perspective and looking at it, just analyzing it from the reader's perspective, right?
You know, it's definitely more than anything more of a comic thing to consider the reader's perspective, especially because we get to see the insides of so many different people's heads. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the reader's perspective just doesn't really matter in a story.
Hmm.
That's a personal thing. That it's not inherently true. People are going to have different opinions on that. But I really just don't think the reader's perspective matters.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get where you're
Yeah.
going with it on that. I'm just I'm trying to look at it. Okay, how would a reader respond to this? Reading it, and how they might process it. You know, as to because this was a fairly popular comic,
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
obviously it did have some appeal to many readers. So why so in analyzing that, obviously looking at the reader's perspective, okay, what in the story here, right, appeals to the readers to where they'd want to keep reading it.
And I get
I
that. I'm
get
just
where
talking
you're
about
coming from
from the
as
narrative's
you
perspective.
want
The
to
reader's
write the
perspective doesn't
story.
matter,
Well,
right?
okay, what was that?
So from the narrative's perspective, which is what we're analyzing here, the reader's perspective doesn't matter because we are the readers. So anything we say is the reader's perspective, especially with something like a comic, because every panel interplays with each other. That taking a single panel and the comment in it, even retroactively talking about the stuff previously, doesn't
Mhm.
matter as much until we keep moving forward, right?
Right.
So the reader's perspective of a comic is everything that gets wrapped up at the end of the comic.
Hmm.
It's the total view of the comic.
All right. Good point. All right, so we'll continue on then here.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Don't be silly. Boys don't run away in their underwear.
Psh, psh. Think boys care about whether they're running around in their underwear or not?
He's up to some mischief, and I'm going to find out what. Yeah, that doesn't seem like that. Just seems like normal workout attire. Of course,
Well, in that day and age, that'd be a skivvies.
yeah. Nothing like this early morning road work. Achoo! To build achoo! A fella up achoo! Sakes alive!
I know how he feels.
Yeah. He's going too slow to be running away. He's up to some mischief. I'll just folly along and see what I can see.
Yeah, look at those polka dots. Those are 100% his skivvies.
All right. Golly, I feel great. Achoo. And now for some shadow boxing. I'll just pretend I'm in the ring with the champ, Tony Fazula.
But I used to do that back when I was in like junior high and high school. I'd get
Uh,
up so early because I just didn't sleep that I would run like 2 miles every morning before school. And then sometimes, depending on what day it was, if I had like some type of sports practice like golf or something, the coach would then have me run another mile when I got to school.
hmm.
And he didn't know I was running 2 miles beforehand. That I already got my exercise in. That's just like a requirement for the class.
Uh, well, look at this way. You were limbered up well before the rest of your classmates, at least.
Yeah, but also sometimes I was really, really hungry by the time he made me run that mile.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it just works up more of an appetite for when snack time came. You go to. I don't know if you had a snack bar at your school where you could just buy, some kind of breakfast, a little snack item, whatever.
Oh, no. At best, I had a bowl of cereal before going to school. But a lot of times I didn't have anything until lunch.
Hmm. But then, aren't you still an early riser to this day?
No, I'm a late sleeper to these days. That's what I am. I go to sleep when most people are waking up.
Because I thought I remember seeing at least one or two of your videos where you were up like at like 4 a.m. going to the store for something or something like that. I
Oh yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. But that I was right before I went to bed.
ah,
So like a lot of times I'll go to bed when the sun gets up and I'll just sleep through the morning and I'll be up by noon.
hmm. All right. So continuing on with the story then here. Um, huh. Aha! Fooled you that time, champion. Ugh! You caught me. You caught me plush on the chin. But ha! It didn't hurt a bit. Shock.
Flush. It's
Oh,
flush on the chin.
flush
That's
on
when
the.
the whole surface area of the fist, the
Uh huh.
front end of your knuckles makes entire contact. It's flush against it.
Yeah. Um. Shocko. Wow. How do you like that one, champ? Bam! Shock. Bless his soul. He's gone plumb crazy.
See somebody who's never shadow boxed before.
Yeah.
Shadow boxing is helpful as like a warm up routine. Just keeping spry, keeping limber, doing your things, but you got to get some actual sparring in, or else it's just like useless. Because you keep thinking of scenarios you're going to hit in, but it's never going to prepare you for a live opponent who's not going to follow the scenarios in your head.
Hmm. Yeah. Ugh. You hit me hard that time, champ. But I can take it. Ugh. I'm I'm crowding in on you, champ. You're bleeding. Something awful. Ugh. You're hanging on by ropes. You're hanging on the rope, champ. Bam, Socko. You're 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 groggy. I hate to slaughter you like this, champ, but the crowd is yelling for a knockout. Shock! Crash! He's down. He's out. And
It's definitely a hopeful
I
kid.
did actually turn the page there to the next, and it looks like the next page is gonna, and it looks like they're just continuing on from here too. So,
Yeah.
but I think we've seen enough of it to get a good sampling, anyways. Folks, the winner and new champion of the world, Slap Scrabble. Hooray! Hooray! Gosh, thanks for the ovation, folks. Well, Tony, you put up a great fight, but I guess the better man won. I'll say so, Slats. Old boy, good luck. Thanks, Tony, old boy. Bless him soul. I have to think a way that I'd break his heart if he knew I was listening to him. Considering how much time it took us to get through this story, I think I'll just ask you the question about this story. I was thinking they were going to be a little bit shorter, but
Yeah.
and
Well,
we talked quite a bit about this one too. So.
yeah, and even going back to your thing about like the audience perspective, right? Like the reader's perspective.
Uh-huh.
It's really hard for us to even gauge what that would be reading this version of it, because until these reprints, most people read this in like a week by week strip format. But we don't know where the strips begin and end. There's sometimes like that one where they were basically the same panel back and forth. Like we could pretty much tell that's a division between a strip, but we don't know like where was the panel that the audience was hanging on for a week before this was in the colored like Sunday paper again.
Yeah. And it looks like it shows I had another comment here. I keep trying to outsmart the stealthy challenger in sticks, but sometimes it doesn't work.
He's just talking about the video game he's playing.
So it's a box fighter he wants to be, and it's Tony Pasta Banzula. He wants to fight of all the dang foolish ambitions. Still, he ain't gonna be happy till he realizes that ambition, and there'll never be a chance for him to box fight Tony Pasta or Fazula or anyone else in Crabtree Corners. There's never been any goings on like that round here, so he'll run away sometime, I suppose. And I do want to keep him somehow. Land of Goshen is a crazy, wild idea, but I think I've got it.
Man, nobody says that anymore.
What?
I don't even know if they said it at that time because they were trying to like emulate an older woman, right? The Land of Goshen.
I think I've heard it a couple of times in like older shows, or certain like more like rural older shows.
Yeah, but that would have been more popular like a decade or two before this comic. And that makes sense because they're trying to write about somebody who is older than the contemporary audience of the comic. It's just like I don't even hear the word Goshen anymore. Like nobody uses that older biblical term for the land of Egypt, like almost at all anymore.
I didn't even know that's what that was.
Yes, it's where the Israelites lived in Egypt. It was the land of Goshen.
Huh. I chew, but boy, but boy, do I feel good, great. I chew. I'll just rest a minute. I chew, and then jog home. There's a car coming up. Jiminy Christmas! What a beautiful girl. She's got a pain, kind of like an angel. Looking at her, makes me feel sort of funny. It might be something or maybe I've caught a cold. And
It's
that's
called a crush. That's what you have, Slats. It's called a crush.
that for that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so overall impressions. This is the only story we'll do from that. So overall impressions of that story.
I like the characters. I think both Abby and Slats are fun characters. I think it's probably better in this collected form, right? Because aside from sometimes having like that one panel that was basically the same words again, just in reverse order. Aside from appearances like that, collected lets you read the story at a better pace. I can't imagine what it probably would have been like to have this longer running story at like strips, which I know a lot of stories did this. Like even Superman had long running story strips and stuff in the paper, but like just waiting over a long period of time to have the story progress. And like, man, there was like the 6 panels I got this week. Now I got to wait until next week to figure out what's happening next for this kind of like up and coming boxer story.
Yeah. Well, box back in the 30s and 40s, of course,
Mm-hmm.
boxing and wrestling were actually very popular sports where people would actually go to the arenas to watch them.
I mean, boxing continued to stay popular, but yes, it is one of the longest popular sports in American history. Um, and like you mentioned, freestyle wrestling used to be very, or actually even more was American folk wrestling was the most popular one, where you'd get anywhere from an arena, or sometimes you could go to your local bar and bet on 2 people who are wrestling, and there'd be like a ring out back. Same with
Mm.
boxing. Like they were just the all American sports.
Well,
Olympic
yeah, well,
wrestling or showman wrestling? Well, we're talking in this case as a sport.
yeah.
Folk style wrestling predates Olympic wrestling. Olympic wrestling is the Greco-Roman style, which was reintroduced. It was kind of resurrected from the dead afterwards. Freestyle and American folk style wrestling technically predate what we call modern Olympic wrestling. Even though the Greco-Roman style has been around forever, it's something that was kind of like resurrected. It's very complicated, the history of the sport.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because there are, now granted, when the National Wrestling Alliance was established in 1948, that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
when you really started to see it going from people not being 100% sure if wrestling was real or choreographed to know it. It's like, by the time we got to the 80s and the WWF and all that, people started to realize, yeah, at least up, wrestling as of the 80s and moving forward was choreographed. The
Well,
stuff
because
like
we're also
you
talking
and I
about two
do
different
on.
things, right?
I mean,
Because even
it's not fake because people can get injured from.
it's a stunt show, more or less, right? Because people
Yeah.
can get injured doing stunt shows too, right? It's scripted is probably a better term for it.
Well,
But we're also
remember A&E did a documentary years ago.
mhm.
The term they used when they did their documentary was called the unreal story of professional wrestling.
Yeah. But we are talking about two different types of wrestling between what we call professional wrestling and sport wrestling, right? And even the history of professional wrestling kind of goes all the way back to this time because that type of show wrestling evolves out of the American circus as a sideshow where they'd have like a different tent with people who would just be performance wrestlers doing folk style wrestling, but in a show format. And that's what evolves into like the Southern wrestling and the stuff that would eventually become like the WWE and stuff all evolve out of that circus sideshow.
Right.
But it does start with the techniques from American folk wrestling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen I've seen some of the pre 19, basically pre television era wrestling
Mhm.
stuff, and early television, right? Like a lot of the pre-television, early television wrestling was more grounded in like Greco. In fact, British professional wrestling still maintained, even though it was choreographed, still maintained a lot more of the freestyle or Greco-Roman style.
Well, British mostly did
Well into the
catch
80s.
wrestling, right? There's a style in Britain called catch wrestling, which
Yeah.
even throughout most of Europe, that's what the thing we call Greco-Roman now kind of evolved into. A lot of places were doing catch wrestling for a long time, and they resurrected the older art of like the Greek style of wrestling that we call Greco-Roman now. That wasn't very popularly done for a long time outside of some traditional circles in the local areas that practiced it. Like in Greece, they were doing Greco wrestling the whole time, but it was more of like a traditional thing.
Yeah, well, the NWA, and I see that the Jozo did make a comment. We'll get to that in a moment here, but the NWA title that we know of today, the National Wrestling Alliance title, that was born when they merged the National Wrestling Association, the National Boxing Association, and the Midwest Wrestling Association titles into the one title.
Yeah.
National Wrestling Association title harkens back. I mean, now some of these names that are even in the professional wrestling, like Lou Thesz, like Jim Londos, George Hackenschmidt, Frank Gotch, some of those guys who predate basically predate the NWA. We know today the National Wrestling Alliance were big names back throughout the 30s and the 40s and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, especially because it's where the money was. Back when the type of show wrestling that would become known as professional wrestling and sports entertainment, when it was still evolving and separating, a lot of the people were also like sports wrestlers. They would go back and forth because it's like any of the techniques that they could use in the major tournament competitions and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they could also use in the performance to get
Well, even as we got into even as we got in as late as the 70s, well, it was a lot more then than it is now. Whereas today we might think of somebody like most recently, of course, Gable Stevenson in who just recently was signed and let go from the WWE. Kurt Angle, a couple of the more recent additions, that people would know. So harking back to the 80s of guys like Brad Rangans back in the 80s. But there are, you go the further back in time you go, the more you have guys who came from amateur backgrounds to the Steiner brothers. They came from an amateur background as well. Shelton Benjamin and Brock Lesnar came from an amateur wrestling.
Well, the thing I was going to say too is even in the modern day, we have the thing I was saying happening in both directions, right? Where there's a difference between being an athlete and being athletic. To be an athlete means you actually need to be competing in a hard rule set competition where the outcome isn't determined, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of the people in professional wrestling came from athlete backgrounds, and a lot of them go from just being athletic to athletes. Like they go back and forth, as we see a lot of people sometimes stepping out to compete in competitions like the UFC, or vice versa, like Ronda Rousey coming in and joining women's wrestling, right? So like the exchange of the fields are still happening today as they did back then.
Yeah. Anyway, let me, because I know if it shows I made a couple of comments here, and I'm sure that you might have something. So he was saying here, I guess, to our point, Olympic wrestling or Showtime wrestling.
Yeah, we already answered that.
Yeah. Nowadays, because I think you answered it. I didn't even see it before until now. Nowadays, Olympic wrestling is memed on as the gayest sport ever after all the Greeks were were mostly bisexual.
That's not even true. That's not even true at all. I mean, there were a selection of them, but the amount
Well,
of gayness
I
happening in
think I know
ancient
where you're going,
Greece
and
is
we
mostly propagandized.
okay, and I kind of know where you're going because I think
Yeah.
I heard. Okay, so I think I can, well, you'll probably know this explanation. I'll get to that in a moment, though. Let's see his other comment here.
Yeah.
And yes, unlike what most people claim, being the sodomizer still makes you gay. All
Yeah, so
right.
what he's probably talking about is the practice of pedestry, which did happen usually among some of the aristocratic members of the ancient Athenian and a few of the other societies, specifically among like the older, more learned men. But it wasn't even as common as a lot of people like to point out. And you can even find a lot of comments and descriptions at the time actually complaining about it and marking pedestry as a perversion even back in ancient Greece.
Pedestry. So, what exactly is pedestry for those of us?
Pedestry is basically when an older man takes a younger man, usually in his teens of age, and kind of like grooms him. Usually there's some level of societal apprenticehood with it, right? But it would
Yeah,
also often come
yeah,
with
okay.
romantic stuff too.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I've heard that too, but I've
Yeah.
heard a slightly different reasoning behind it. I've heard in that kind of situation, it's kind of an apprenticeship type program where they're not only training them in whatever the um, the job they're looking to get into is, but as part of their training too, they're kind of trying to like teach them the ways of how to engage in sex. Not it's not as much out of like quote unquote an attraction per se,
Well,
but more
that
just as
depends. That
huh?
really depends. That really, really, really depends. And in some of these cases, the pedestry, Fizz is right. It was mostly about domination. It was usually, like I said, the aristocrat, like the politician class, would do it. Amongst some of them, not even all of them. And they were mostly talking about grooming them in a form of like apprenticeship. It was to make them statesmen or potential statesmen or people who would work for the statesman class. But it was still about like dominating the younger boys, and it wasn't that common. In fact, it was mostly even documented because of how rare it was and how a lot of people didn't agree with it.
Yeah. Well, again, I had heard that story too. I just heard it slightly different. I didn't think it. I was. The way I heard it, it wasn't as much about domination or sexual orientation or anything or sexual attraction or anything like that. It was more looked at in the veins of these older men were trying to show these boys what you would do with a woman when you had the opportunity to do so.
Well, I don't think that didn't happen. But the thing is, like, the past was very complicated, and there's a lot of things that happened. And the thing I'm talking about also definitely happened because we have documentation of it happening.
Hmm.
Right. But it's not about whether something happened or not. It's how pervasive was it, right? Same thing with like certain military campaigns. Sometimes there'd be younger men who would go and service the men in the military, but even that was only in select times you can find out who the commanders in the armies were. Like we know what was happening under Alexander the Great's army, right?
Actually, I don't. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, that was happening in certain parts of his army. It didn't seem like he was somebody who cared that was happening because they were on very, very long military campaigns where they weren't going to be able to see the women from their homeland for months on end. They were going all across Europe and Asia and stuff. A lot of times they would just sleep with locals, but sometimes it is known that the younger men, the boys of the camp, would occasionally service the sergeants and upper class people. Again, wasn't a pervasive thing, but it was a thing that was documented that happened.
And Fitzgerald was asking, why would you need to teach a human what he instinctively knows to do. Again, that's the way I heard that what this quote unquote
Yeah, I think
pedestry
there might be
was.
some things missing from what you heard.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way that's just
Yeah.
the way I heard it. Doesn't it? But
And
you know,
also, I can think of a reason where you might. Now, I don't think that's exactly what was happening there. A lot of times there was manipulation where people were saying they were doing things for their own purposes. But in captivity, animals don't breed. Humans aren't very different. That's also why population, like birth rates, go down inside of cities, right? Because in a bigger city, people are basically living in captivity, like it's a zoo. And we know that by showing animals the equivalent of basically porn, right? Like if we show pandas videos of other pandas doing it, we'll actually get them to do it. Because sometimes they need to be retaught. And that's just what happens when animals are in captivity. We aren't different.
yeah. Well, it's kind of funny you give that you give that analogy because I do remember. I know Yellow Flash covered this maybe a couple years ago. I know one of the big stories that's been going on the last few years is Japan's population crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
How their birth rates have gotten to the point where they're dangerously low. They're so
Yes.
dangerously low that I do remember there was a story out there, what was it, about a year or two ago, where, I guess the Japanese government, the Diet or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
was um, was actually asking mangakas to make more
Yeah, it was under
romantic.
Abe. Abe had a whole program about this. Spy Family was actually a manga that started out of that program.
Yeah, in other words, the idea of them trying to emphasize more of a romantic family like situation to kind of spur more Japanese young people to start to
Mm-hmm.
procreate.
Yeah, yeah. And Fizz, actually, South Korea, even though it is worse than Japan, Japan's actually not even close to the worst birth rates now. South Korea is worse. It's not the worst. A lot of South America, when you actually analyze the data, is worse than anywhere in Asia. Brazil, particularly. And a lot of people don't know this because the UN gives, when it goes over those areas, they give you what they expect the birth rate to be. They correct for the numbers they get, what they want the birth rates to be. But the actual birth rate of Brazil is even lower than South Korea when you don't go with their hopeful wishes and just look at the data raw.
Well, I think Peugeot has got a couple more things to say here. Well, pandas don't like being watched, is the problem.
Who does? But actually, we find out even when they're not being actively watched, they still don't do it. They need to be kind of like worked up into it, and it's a general problem with animals in captivity. A lot of them don't. Blue tangs, the fish, don't reproduce in aquariums at all. They just won't.
And in South Korean birth rates are even worse. Everyone lives in Seoul. Well, yeah, I think Metal, didn't you just say that?
Yeah, yeah, I was already responding to that one. Part of it too might even be what makes them worse than most other Asian countries might be because they're Catholic, right? And outside of the United States, basically every Catholic country is really suffering more than other countries in birth rates. And I think that's also probably partially why South America is doing so bad.
Because the idea of having sex outside of marriage is considered sinful, and people don't want to be
Even
actively.
within marriage, sometimes they might encourage celibacy in some situations. Like the Catholic Church is kind of really weird with its like anti-sex ideas.
Anyways, I'm sorry.
That's a weird derail.
Yeah, well, this was a good conversation and all that. I think it was a very informative one, but it's
Nothing to do with what we're reading.
Yeah. What was that?
It has nothing to do with what we're reading, though.
Yeah, but we kind of got sidetracked because we were talking about like Olympic wrestling and all that. And well, initially it was because Slaps wants to become a boxer,
Mm-hmm.
kind of the boxing and wrestling stuff. Then it evolved into the others. So, but yeah, so we're coming up on an hour 40 here. So I think as much as I don't think we really have because I still have the this day in each history segment to do and probably some closing comments. But I still think the conversations we had were still informative, still pretty good. So
well, if I can give a recommendation for a read or a watch, depending on how you want to do it, that has something oddly to do with every part of the conversation we just had. Boxing and Catholicism. I would recommend people to go and read Rumiko Takahashi's 1 Pound Gospel, a really great read. It's by the same creator as like Urusei Yatsura, Maisen Ikoku, stuff like that. You can find it on Internet Archive for free if you want to read it that way. Or you could even watch the animated adaptation or the live action. There's actually a Jade drama live action version that you can watch. It's like I don't remember if it was a season or a TV movie.
You since you mentioned Rumiko Takahashi, that does remind me. I don't know if you were watching the show the other day, the 15th, but you realize that Inuyasha, it celebrated its 25th anniversary.
Oh yeah, I know.
The Inuyasha anime.
We've been watching it.
Its 25th anniversary the other day.
Yeah, we've been watching it over here. It's Inuyasha's kind of become like one of our things where we ran out of something else to watch, and we just go back to continuing Inuyasha. Like it's our bounce back show.
Well, it's 167 episodes plus you have the 26 episode of the final act as well. So.
Oh yeah, I've seen it like 7 times.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because whereas that's as many times that you've watched Inuyasha, I've probably watched Yu Yu Hakusho about as many, if not a little. Well, I think a little bit more than that. Like I think I've watched Yu Yu Hakusho like 8 or 9 times.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think of any show, I've probably watched Ranma 1/2 the most, which I think the last time we went through it, the original one, it was like I'm trying to remember, it's my 12th or 13th run through the entire series. It was probably my 12th. I'll be a little more generous and go backwards and round down to 12th. It was probably my 12th run. But we've also been watching the new one. I've been loving the new one for the most part.
Yeah. So, anyways, as I said, we're gonna probably start to wrap up here, just because the conversation ran a little long, but that's okay. But again, I think we had a good time just reading that one story, and
I think we got enough of Abby and Slats to kind of get a gist of what's going on there.
Yeah. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to the Captain of the Kid, because I know you wanted to possibly check that out. Maybe somewhere down the road if we run into that again. But anyways, with that being said, today is Sunday, October 19th, 2025. So let's go ahead and take a look back at this weekend in niche history. So 18, 19, 18, and 19. Okay. All right, so first off, looking back to yesterday, I'm going to head back 90 years ago yesterday. 90 years ago yesterday. On yesterday's date, 90 years ago, the Fleischer Studios' Making Stars premiered in theaters on yesterday's date 90 years ago. Making Stars is a 1935 Fleischer Studios animated short film starring Betty Boop. The short contains one of the earliest clear examples of the Oriental riff that would become popular as a leitmotif a leitmotif. Okay,
It's a leitmotif, is how you say it.
oh, leitmotif. What exactly
Mhm.
is a leitmotif?
A leitmotif is so a motif is a pattern, like within a song or a piece of art or whatever. And a leitmotif is a signature pattern. It's something that you can piece out between multiple, like pieces of art or songs or whatever. In this case, they're talking about the
Oh yeah, because I guess you're reading the rest of it already, right, and read it. For
Mhm.
Asian culture, following the release of the 1974 song Kung Fu Fighting." Do-do-do-do-do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's the leitmotif they're talking about.
yeah. All right. Um, from what I read too, let me see. Um, apparently, this was one of those cartoons that was also apparently taken out of television rotation.
Probably
Uh,
because of their Asian stereotypes.
well, here okay. Here they were saying more black
Oh,
stereotypes.
I see that there. I was guessing because of the Asian stuff. I guess that wasn't as bad as the black stereotypes in there.
Betty is the MC of Making Stars, a stage review introducing the quote unquote stars of tomorrow. A series of performing babies. Acts include the Colorful Three, in parentheses, a trio of stereotyped black babies singing Heidi Do, an Asian baby marksman, and a bouncing Russian baby named Little Miss Trotsky.
Oh my god, that's a horrible name.
Little Miss Trotsky.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I had heard, it was a black stereotype, but
Yeah.
that, you know,
I mean,
90,
it could be all of them too, because that sounds like the other two were equally stereotyped. You're
yeah,
gonna call a Russian Trotsky.
yeah. But anyways, 90 years ago yesterday, the premiere of Making Stars.
Boop boop be doop.
Alrighty then. So now moving on to the next piece of niche history as we move ahead to the year 1950. So 75 years ago yesterday, 1950. The 25th issue of Gabby Hayes Western went on sale from Fawcett Comics. Sold for 10 cents. Was 48 pages. So on this date, or on yesterday's date rather, 75 years ago, the 25th issue of Gabby Hayes Western um, premiered on yesterday's date, 75 years ago.
Hmm.
So now getting on to today's dates. Let me just double check those real quick. And 1985. Okay. All right. So 40 years ago today, the following anime premiered on Japanese television on this date 40 years ago today. Um, the anime series Dream Star Button Nose from Sanrio TV Asahi premiered on this date 40 years ago, along with the OVA of AIC's OVA series Fight Iser 1. So, Dream Star
Hmm.
Button from Sanrio TV Asahi and Fight Iser 1 from AIC both premiered on this date 40 years ago. Were you about to say something, Metal?
No, no, no. I've never seen either of those.
Yeah. All right. So, and I guess I'm back. Okay. All right. So, with that being said, one last piece of niche history before we go. Oh yeah, 2015. Okay, on this date 10 years ago today, WWE held its Go Home Raw before its Hell in a Cell event the following Sunday. This is the Monday Night Raw Go Home show before Hell in a Cell on being held at the American Airlines Arena in Dallas. And on that show included in the main event the Wyatt family of Bray Wyatt, Eric Rowan, and Braun Strowman, defeating the members of the Shield of Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins via DQ. Kevin Owens defeated Mark Henry. Charlotte Flair, with Becky Lynch in her corner, defeated Brie Bella with Nikki Bella and Alicia Fox via submission in her corner. Let's see. Earlier in the evening, Team Bella of Alicia Fox and Nikki Bella with Brie Bella in their corner defeated Team BAD, Sasha Banks and Naomi with Tamina in their corner. Show opened up with the New Day of Big E, Kofi Kingston, and Xavier Woods defeating John Cena and the Dudley Boys, Bubba Ray and Devon, on that show. So there you have it, folks. That's all we have for you tonight.
Ooh, actually, I've got some history for you.
All right.
Kind of tangential everything. 40 years ago yesterday, the Nintendo Entertainment System debuted in the United States.
So back in 1985 then, huh?
Yeah. It's already been 40 years.
Yeah. I think I had a Nintendo early on growing up. The big old cartridges you'd have to put in it and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd have to blow into them because they didn't want to work.
Yep. All right. So anyways, well, before we do head out, Metal, you want to do any last minute sharing of links, promoting anything?
Yeah. Just once again, if people like the weird things that come out of my mouth, maybe they would also like the stuff I write, which you can go and find over at xdynamischaos.com. Sometimes they're comics, sometimes they're prose. All the time, they're chaotic. So, have fun with that. And also, you can find me most days of the week over at the Vomitorium Live, where a lot of times I'm playing a video game, but we often get sidetracked on weird conversations during the gameplay anyway.
Much like we did tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but always informative, nonetheless. Right.
I mean, I try not to be.
All right. So, with that being said, then, Metal, if you don't mind sticking around for a couple moments after we wrap up here.
I mean, I do mind, but I'll stick around anyway.
Well, just for some post-show wrap-up stuff. You know how it goes. Anyways, with that being said, I thank y'all for being here, and I hope to see next Sunday. Of course, we'll be starting our July 1940 coverage. I'll have Apex from Apex Comics with me for that one. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.